Chapter 1. Discipline is overrated. Discipline is romanticized in trading. People act like it's a personality trait, like you either have it or you don't. They say, just be more disciplined, control your emotions, stick to the plan. That advice sounds tough. It sounds practical. It's incomplete. Because discipline based on effort will eventually fail. Willpower is not stable. Focus is not stable. Emotional control is not stable. You are not the same trader at 9:30 a.m. and 2 p.m. energy drops. Confidence shifts, frustration builds, complacency creeps in. If your entire performance depends on staying strong mentally, you've built your system on unstable ground. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Discipline collapses when temptation is available, not when you're weak, when choice exists. If your rules allow interpretation, you will interpret. If your system leaves room for adjustment, you will adjust. And every adjustment feels justified in the moment. Nobody wakes up and decides to be reckless. They rationalize deviations. They tell themselves, this one is an exception. The market is moving differently today. I need to adapt. But adaptation without structure is just emotional improvisation. Discipline fails the moment it becomes negotiable. If you can argue with your own rules, you will eventually lose the argument, because the brain is incredibly good at justification. It can generate logic for any impulse, especially under uncertainty, especially when money is involved, especially after a winning streak, or during a drawdown. In those moments, you don't need motivation. You need protection from yourself. That's what most traders miss. They believe discipline is about resisting emotion. It's not. It's about designing a system where resistance isn't required. If your execution requires constant self-control, you will burn out. And when you burn out, standards slip quietly. You take a marginal entry. You hesitate on a clean one. You move a stop slightly. You add a little size. Each decision feels small, but small deviations compound. The irony is this: the traders who believe they are the most disciplined often rely on feeling strong. They perform well when focused. They collapse when tilted. That's not discipline. That's conditional control. Real discipline is structural. It doesn't depend on mood. It doesn't depend on confidence. It doesn't depend on motivation. It depends on removing discretion. If you can override your system in real time, your discipline is optional. And optional discipline is temporary discipline. That is why discipline is overrated. Structure is not. Structure removes the need to be heroic. Structure reduces the number of decisions required. Structure reduces interpretation. Structure reduces internal debate. And once you reduce internal debate, you reduce the space where ego negotiates. Because ego doesn't attack loudly. It speaks when you have room to decide. Which is exactly why the real danger isn't lack of discipline. It's too much optionality. And that's where we're going next. Chapter 2. The Danger of Optionality. Choice feels empowering. It makes you feel adaptive, intelligent, in control. But execution environments punish excess choice. In trading, every additional option increases cognitive load. When you sit in front of a chart and ask, should I take this? You've already shifted from system execution to personal judgment. Now you're evaluating variables that shouldn't matter. Recent P&L, your mood, the trade you missed earlier, the fear of missing this one, the fear of being wrong again. That's not trading. That's negotiating with uncertainty. And negotiation consumes energy fast. The more flexible your system is, the more you must think. If your plan includes phrases like, use discretion, adjust based on feel, context dependent, you've built a system that requires you to be psychologically perfect every day. That's unrealistic, because performance fluctuates. Some days you're sharp, some days you're slightly reactive, Some days you're overconfident. Some days you're hesitant. If your rules bend according to your internal state, your results will mirror your emotional volatility. Optionality creates inconsistency. Let's break this down practically. If you can, add to winners if it feels strong, reduce size if it feels off, move stops if structure slightly shifts, skip a valid trade if you're unsure. You're constantly adjusting the system in real time. Real-time adjustments feel sophisticated, but most real-time adjustments are emotional responses disguised as logic. You think you're adapting, you're actually reacting. Adaptation is planned before exposure. Reaction happens during exposure. That difference matters. When exposure is live and money is on the line, your nervous system is not objective. If you allow optionality in that state, ego fills the gap. Not because you're arrogant, because uncertainty is uncomfortable. The brain seeks resolution. Optionality gives it tools to resolve tension immediately. If you're winning, optionality lets you expand. If you're losing, optionality lets you press. If you're flat, optionality lets you participate. No matter the state, optionality justifies action. That's the issue. It always provides a path to do something, and doing something feels better than doing nothing. Binary systems don't feel empowering, they feel restrictive. If criteria are not met, no trade. That simplicity removes internal debate, but people resist that simplicity because it removes identity. With binary execution, you are not reading the market, you are complying with structure. That feels mechanical, and traders crave involvement. Optionality preserves the illusion that you are shaping outcomes. Rigid rules expose the reality that you are executing probabilities. That's uncomfortable for the ego. If there is no choice during execution, there is no room to reinterpret outcomes later. And that is where the real resistance begins. Because once you remove choice, you remove the ability to rewrite the story after the fact. And that leads directly to the deeper issue. You don't just allow choice for flexibility, you allow choice to protect your identity, which is exactly why you keep giving yourself options in the first place. Chapter 3. Why you want choice. Choice protects ego. That's the real reason you keep it. If you fully commit to rigid rules and you lose, there's nowhere to hide. No reinterpretation, no almost, no if I had just probability. And probability is emotionally uncomfortable because it removes control. Humans don't like randomness. We prefer causality. If I do X, I get Y. Trading doesn't guarantee that exchange, so when you lock yourself into strict rules, you accept something painful. You can execute perfectly and still lose. That strips away the illusion of personal mastery. And ego doesn't like that. Ego wants contribution. It wants authorship. It wants to believe that results reflect intelligence. Optionality preserves that belief. If you allow discretion, you can always rewrite the story. After a loss, I should have waited. I rushed. I read it wrong. After a win, I saw that early. I felt the shift. I trusted my read. Choice gives you narrative flexibility. Narrative flexibility protects identity. If rules are rigid and results are random, your identity isn't special. That's uncomfortable. So you keep wiggle room. You keep the ability to adjust entries, to tweak stops, to override size, to reinterpret bias mid-session. Because if you don't, you must accept that the edge exists outside your personality, and that threatens ego. Here's something most traders won't admit. They want to feel involved. They want to feel like they are influencing outcomes. Rigid structure removes influence. It reduces your role to executor. That feels mechanical, detached, impersonal. But markets reward impersonal execution. They don't care how insightful you felt. They don't care how intuitive you were. They care about distribution over time. And distribution doesn't need your personality. It needs repetition. Choice reduces repetition. Because if you're constantly adjusting, you're never gathering clean data. Every discretionary change contaminates the sample size. You're not testing a system, you're testing mood, and mood fluctuates. That's why inconsistency shows up before failure. You'll have bursts of brilliance, then phases of confusion, then sudden drawdowns, not because your edge disappeared, because choice kept reshaping it. Rigid structure feels limiting because it exposes you. It removes the ability to hide behind interpretation, and most people aren't uncomfortable with losing money. They're uncomfortable with losing certainty about themselves. That's the real resistance. Which is why Chapter 4 isn't about mindset, it's about constraint. Chapter 4. Eliminate choice or accept inconsistency. If discipline collapses when choice exists, then remove choice. Not partially, not emotionally, structurally. Before the session begins, define your exact entry criteria, define your invalidation level, define position size, define maximum number of trades, define maximum daily loss, define session cutoff time, define shutdown triggers, write them, concrete, measurable, binary. During the session, no reinterpretation, no mid-trade creativity, no resizing because momentum feels strong, no widening stops because structure is still intact. If it is not predefined, it is forbidden. The market will try to provoke you. You'll feel the urge to anticipate, the urge to recover, the urge to capitalize, the urge to just this once. Those urges are not signals, they're discomfort responses, and if you give them room, choice creeps back in. Here's the rule. The moment you override any predefined execution rule during a live session, you close all positions and you stop trading for the day. Immediately. No exceptions. Not after the trade resolves. Not after you fix it. Immediately. Why? Because the second you override structure, you've proven you are trading based on internal state, not system integrity. Continuing after that only compounds damage. This rule introduces consequence. Without consequence, discipline is optional. With consequence, discipline becomes enforced. You will hate this rule at first. It will feel restrictive. It will feel excessive. It will feel like it's limiting opportunity. Good, because opportunity is not your problem. Inconsistency is. If you cannot trade inside constraints, you don't have an edge. You have moments. Freedom in trading feels powerful. Structure feels suffocating. But freedom produces stories. Structure produces equity. Pick one. Because if you refuse to eliminate choice, you are choosing inconsistency. And inconsistency always shows up on the equity curve. No debate, no philosophy, just results.